This video is titled Animal, Vegetable, or Mineral and covers Chapter 4 from Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think Revisited. In this video, we're going to cover creating mindless choices. Specifically, we'll talk about the right number of clicks, labeling navigation, and guiding user selections. So what is the right number of clicks? This is actually a big discussion topic in web design right now. You've probably come across a number of heuristics that say things like you should have no more than 3 clicks in order for the user to get to any particular action, or in order for the user to be able to accomplish any particular goal. But Steve Krug argues that the right number of clicks is not really the best way to view the problem, and that a better question is not to ask how many clicks, but rather how hard is each click. By rephrasing the question this way, we actually consider the amount of thought required in order to make each individual selection. And we're also accounting for the amount of uncertainty that the user is presented with when they're trying to make the right choice. The truth is, users don't really care about the number of clicks, as long as each click is painless and they have confidence that they're on the right track. Thus, it's much better to give them more clicks where they know each and every step along the way that they're going in the right direction than to have a very shallow navigation with only a few clicks, but they're constantly having to go back to the top because they keep going down the wrong path. Users need to be able to follow the scent of information. Your links should be clear, and they should unambiguously identify the target. Krug's rule of thumb is that 3 mindless, unambiguous clicks are equal to 1 click that requires thought, in which case this provides you with a lot more wiggle room in order to have more deep navigation. Of course, there's some exceptions to this, right? So we're presuming that the load time is negligible. If you've got a site that requires excessive amounts of load time, then of course every single click you do is going to add significantly more time for the individual. And of course, if you're talking about a large number of clicks in order to drill down a specific path, and you expect the user to repeatedly go down the same path over and over again, that could be problematic as well. In fact, that's probably a candidate to having a shortcut much closer to the top of the site. So when we talk about unambiguous clicks, you should think in terms of the old game, 20 questions. And one of the first questions that people often ask is it an animal, a vegetable, or a mineral? This is a mindless choice, especially if you presume that anything that's not an animal or a plant is logically a mineral. Right? These 3 particular categories are thus mutually exclusive, and it's very easy to figure out whichever thing you're thinking about, which category it would fall into. Right? You want to have the same type of mindless, unambiguous choices for your users. And of course, if users have trouble navigating your site, they're going to become frustrated, and it will hurt your credibility, ultimately leading them to switch to another website. So I'm going to give you an example here of some ambiguous choices. Right? So this is Office Depot, Office Max's website, and you'll see on here that we've got navigation for office supplies, paper, school supplies, and then we've got this ad here that says gear up for school, save on supplies, shop now. And there's a button there. Right? So you could think of, especially if you throw in paper, you could think of something that perhaps would fall into all 4 of those particular items. And so it's not clear to the user if they've got a particular item in mind. Is that a school supply? Is that an office supply? Can I go to either one to get to my particular option that I have in mind? Do I have to go to paper if I want paper? Right? So these sort of non-exclusive options can potentially cause confusion to the user, especially if they aren't completely redundant and there are some items that are in one and different items in another. It's a random guess on their part as to which place they should look. All right, so our goal is to give these unambiguous choices, but what do you do if the choices aren't that simple? You can't clearly make them unambiguous. Right, so if you can't avoid a difficult choice, you need to give the minimum amount of guidance to aid the user in making the correct choice. And your guidance should have 3 qualities. The first is that it should be brief. You should be able to give them the smallest amount of info that they need in order to help them. The next one is that it should be timely. You should place it in a location so that users encounter it exactly when they need it. And it should be unavoidable. You need to format it in a way that ensures that the users will notice it. If you've ever been a tourist in a European country, you may have seen an image. Well, you may have in real life experienced what we're showing here in the image. This is a pedestrian crosswalk, and it's very brief, timely, and unavoidable what the instructions are. This is especially helpful because the traffic is probably coming in the opposite direction than you expect, and you're very likely to not look in the correct direction. So here's an example of items that are much more clear, unambiguous, timely, brief, unavoidable. Right, so we've got some buttons up here. Right, it's very clear what I need to press to update the quantity. It's very clear if I want to save this item for later, what to press. Down here, you might see that, okay, I've got taxes, and I might say, because I'm a government purchaser, I'm tax exempt, what do I do? They very timely have provided a link that says tax exempt and gives me more instructions on what to do to get rid of these taxes. It's very clear how to proceed. And then when you have something that's much more ambiguous, like this B/O, which it may not be clear what this particular item means, there's a little info mark here that then allows me to get more information. And when I click on this information mark, it explains to me that BO stands for back order, and it explains what a back order is and how I will get my item. So in summary, Krug's second law of usability is that it doesn't matter how many times I have to click, as long as each click is a mindless, unambiguous choice. So it's not the number of clicks that's important, but rather the difficulty of the selection. The goal here is to make sure that each of those items are self-evident, that there's no reason for the user to get confused. Right? So we should label our links in our navigation to make sure that those choices are mindless, making them clear and mutually exclusive. And if we need to provide some guidance because we're not able to make those instructions or those labels clear and mutually exclusive, we should make sure that those instructions are very brief, timely, and unavoidable.